We would never interview Joan Rivers live.
Oh,
I mean, I am in a little tiny, and they are tiny little dressing rooms in that store, trying on bathing suits, and I am naked. My phone rings and it's Jeff. That's okay, except now I'm talking to President Ford, and I am naked.
in your birthday suit.
And I was in between Nancy Reagan and Ralph Lauren. But this is about my entire life. This is my legacy. And I don't know if I could have written it, at least not in the way it is now, until this point in my life.
Welcome to Privet Palm Beach Presents, bringing you everything Palm Beach. Coming to you from our active storefront studio in the exciting new Nora District.
This episode of Privet Palm Beach Presents is brought to you by Caprock, a privately owned multifamily office serving Palm Beach and beyond. Caprock provides independent wealth advisory and investment services for families, foundations, and institutions. Learn more at caprock.com.
This week brings us Good Day Palm Beach, with hosts JAYNE Chase, Jack Lynch, and Carolina BUIA.
Coming up today, we have Joan Lunden visiting us in the studio.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of Good Day Palm Beach. I am JAYNE Chase, along with
Jack Lynch
And Carolina BUIA.
the best in the business. And I wanted to tell you guys about this really interesting trend, I think, that was, I didn't really even know about this before. So I was at my book club last night. I haven't been in a book club in a really long time. We were reading a book called Theo of Golden, which was a very spiritually interesting, conscious-raising book, so to speak. And one of the girls was saying that she's now doing this thing called playing it forward. And all of us sat around saying, well, what does that mean?
Paying it forward.
No, playing it forward.
Yeah. What's that?
Oh,
mean?
maybe it was paying it forward.
Paying it forward
Paying
means-
it forward because she goes to Starbucks and she pays for the person behind
That's
her.
called paying it forward.
Paying it forward.
Yeah.
Yes. And then everybody around the room had a really interesting story about how they're paying it forward. Now, I had done that a couple of times in my life, but they're all doing it all over Palm Beach County. And I thought it was...
That's great.
I thought it was such a beautiful trend.
And
to
we
sort of
do
talk
that.
about.
We do that a lot in my family.
You
and
do?
people have done it to us too. I mean, at
Tell
the
us
mall
about
a
that.
few years ago when my kids were younger and they were messy and throwing things on the floor, this family paid for our lunch and then snuck off. And the waitress was like, this family thought you guys were adorable. We were a hot mess. And they paid for our lunch.
I mean, if my
What a
mother
nice
sees
thing.
military, she'll pay. Like, she likes to pay for anyone. Like, if
Right.
they're in line at a whatever, she's like, let me.
Right. I just thought that was a really beautiful trend. And I don't hear people talking
I do
about
that
that
at-
so much, right? Do you?
You know, there was a moment a few years ago where people were talking about that. Well, we need to bring it back.
I think we need to bring it back too.
I
Yeah.
love that you're setting the spark to bring it back. I'm going to pay something forward today.
Well, me too. And I just think Palm Beach County is so philanthropic. Our community is amazing and so generous. But I think, you know, you don't necessarily have to
Do
write
something
the-
on a big scale.
Exactly. You can buy
Small.
somebody a cup of coffee.
It's great.
Yeah. So I thought, you
I
know,
buy
Good Day
food.
Palm Beach, we're going to do that. So what's going on with you guys?
Well, I'm excited that the boat show is coming into town. 'Cause I love being on the water.
love
I love
traffic and
boats.
road closures?
No. I
And
like
every
not being
road-
on the road, but on the water.
Every road's closed. You can't get anywhere.
Yeah. No,
So
it's
I'm
crazy.
going to an event with a bunch of friends of mine on Wednesday on a boat, and I'm just really excited to be on
I
it.
saw you in
Good.
Wellington.
That'll be fun.
I
saw you
know.
in Wellington at the Burgess, at the Wellington Club for that amazing.
That jumping event, those horses are incredible. I want to
Incredible.
come back as a show horse.
Right? But Burgess was sponsoring the event, which is at the boat show. It's a super yacht. They have a showroom on Peruvian.
Yeah.
That was a really nice evening.
Fun
Yeah,
event.
they actually have a yacht that they're showing. It's a catamaran. It's the largest eco-friendly catamaran in the world at 145 feet.
Wow.
I just want to
How
move
many
in there.
people does that hold?
A lot.
A lot of people.
All my family, your family's family.
I did
Dogs.
the opening of the Nora House last night, which was the new condominium that they're launching.
Oh, Jack,
how is
tell us
that?
about
Dixie Highway between 10th and 11th. So
that. Just around the corner.
Yeah, they had a party at the right in one of the loft spaces above it, and really nice. You know, I met Joe, what's his name? Joe First, the guy that is from Wynwood.
Yes,
He's one of the guys behind it, and Element's launching their sales office with Christopher Scott, who we know. We love Christopher.
Yeah.
And it was exciting. It's cool. I mean, it's a really beautiful building. There's 100 and something units, and
they're all for sale, no rentals.
They're all for sale. There's going to be a rental building behind it, closer to the hotel. So the hotel's, you know, on the railroad. This is going to be on the street, and then there's going to be the multifamily in between the rental and the hotel and the.
But this is the first one that they've kind of broken ground on and almost done with.
They launched the sales yesterday.
Wow.
So that was cool.
Wow.
And what else? Tomorrow we're hosting our 25th anniversary at JAYNE for
we will be there.
The Worth Avenue Women's Store, and that's benefiting Red Sneakers for Oakley. So that's
25
tomorrow.
years.
Yeah.
Incredible. Incredible.
25 years.
We're excited. We're going to be there. Also, the Holiday House, which benefits the Breast Cancer Research Foundation, opened a couple weeks ago, which I co-chaired.
In Wellington.
With Andrea Stark and Campion Platt and Iris Stanker, and who started it. And that's in Wellington. And there are 2 houses that Joe Farrell built and donated to us, which was enormously generous. And it's just on the outside of the Wellington Polo Club. So that's open through May. So that's a fun thing to go do, everybody, with your friends and go have lunch in Wellington. It's amazing what's going on up there. Just amazing.
In her new book, Life Beyond the Script, Joan Lunden pulls back the curtain on her life outside the ABC studios. She shares with us the moments, the unexpected turns, and the reinventions of what continues to be her incredible life. So today in our studio, Unscripted, we welcome Joan Lunden. Thank you for being here.
It's great to be here. I love being down here in Florida.
We love having you here. It's just great. Everybody has come down from the north, and having somebody like you here just makes it even more special. So thank you for coming in today.
We spend as much time down here as we can get away with. So.
Exactly.
And interestingly, you know, in the community that we live in, a lot of us were all snowbirds. Then COVID happened, and everybody came down, and a lot of people, I think, just said, we're not going back to that.
I mean, resort living
cold,
at a certain point is better than city living. The airport's 10 minutes away.
Yeah.
There's no, I mean, we were so lucky. I said it's basically the Upper East Side of New York where I live with better weather and no state income tax.
Yes.
If you want to talk about it. But you feel safe here. I think women wear jewelry. You know, it's just a nice place to live, right?
Yeah, you can't beat it.
How many years have you been coming down here?
So I started coming down here, oh my gosh, maybe 25 years ago, because my daughter was a real champion equestrian. And so I had a home in Wellington. And she was, you know, she won everything you could win in the United States. She was Grand Prix jumper.
Wow.
But, you know, they go to college, and eventually they kind of, at one point I said, we're going to sell the horses, and when you marry and make enough money, you can start buying horses like this yourself, but like enough.
Right.
And so then we moved over to West Palm Beach, you know, after we kind of left the horse world. But I love living in the Polo Club too.
Yeah.
It is so nice up there. And, you know, it's just, there's something about being in sunshine all the time that just does something for your spirit. And it really rains a lot in New York. I mean, every single time I'm on the phone with a friend there or my children, I'm like, how's the weather, guys? Pouring, you know, kind of that 45 and rainy.
It was snowy.
It was snowy, yeah.
Yeah. I was going to launch my book March 3rd, and I was down here, and I heard on Friday that they were expecting this huge snowstorm. And I actually was one of the only planes that
made it out.
That made it out and landed in Westchester, New York.
Wow.
And my husband said, I'm really not comfortable with you flying into New York. I said, I'm sorry, I have a TV show to do. I have a book to launch.
Well, I absolutely loved reading this book. I read every bit of it, and so many great nuggets, so many great moments. But I particularly loved when you were able to bring your firstborn to work at Good Morning America. How was that?
So I was working at Eyewitness News. I was a street reporter, and I anchored on the weekends. And I just did Good Morning America, you know, every now and then. But I was kind of like in the queue to be the next co-host. And so one evening I was getting my story ready for the 6 o'clock news in my little news cubby at my typewriter. And it's such a giveaway, I know. And my phone rang, and it was my agent. And he said, I just got a call from ABC. They're going to hire you full-time at GMA, and implicit in that is that you're going to take over as co-host. And I said, okay, I'll call you after the show. I got to finish my story.
Didn't your mouth drop?
20 minutes later,
Wow.
I knew I was up for it.
Oh, you did? Okay.
But I mean, I also had a story to get ready, and I was like the second story
On deadline.
I was on deadline.
Yeah.
And 20 minutes later, I was just getting up ready to go to the studio. My phone rang again, and it was my gynecologist. Congratulations, you're pregnant with your first child.
Oh, my gosh.
And I really swear to God, I never for a moment thought, oh, boy, that would have been great. But timing was, I just thought, all right, I got to figure out how to do this.
Right.
That was your first child.
I was due, first child, I delivered on the 4th of July.
Oh my gosh.
Took her years to know that everybody didn't have firecrackers and fireworks on their birthday.
Yeah.
And I went back, I was due to go back August 28th. And, you know, I had been doing all these interviews with experts from La Leche League, and I knew I should breastfeed my baby. Now, when we were doing this negotiation, it was still 1979. You couldn't say the word breastfeeding on television. Wow. It was one of the FCC words you couldn't say.
That's incredible.
That is incredible.
You couldn't say breast or breastfeeding.
1979?
Just remember, I entered the business in 1973. Women didn't get the right to have a credit card in their own name until 1972. I hope that this gets in the hands of a lot of young women to get kind of a timeline and understand how different. When I entered the business in 73, it was an all-white male business, full stop. And, you know, so when I kind of thought, how am I going to do this with Good Morning America, I called my agent and said, would you ask him if I can bring the baby to work with me? He was like, what? What are you talking about? I said, well, I'm going to be breastfeeding. And by the way, this was, back then, there weren't all the high-tech finagle breast pumps that there are today. And he asked, and kudos to ABC, I don't think they really understood what they were saying yes to, really. They thought it was going to be the best kept secret, quite frankly.
But in your dress, they thought in the dressing rooms,
they gave me a little dressing room right next to mine. And so I came in the first day with little baby Jamie, 7 weeks old, in my arms. And they did this big press conference after the show to announce the new co-host. They took me aside beforehand and said, look, Newsweek, Time, every woman's magazine, New York Post, New York Times, they're all here. Don't say anything about the fact you have a baby upstairs, because these are television critics. They'll chew you up and spit you out. Like,
oh my gosh.
They'll never think you could actually do your job. I said, I didn't really plan on bringing it up. And so David Hartman, who was my co-host at that time, introduced me, and I said a few words. I opened it up to questions. First question, Time Magazine. We hear you're bringing your baby to work. How did you work that out with ABC?
I love that.
And
they got the scoop.
I mean, and that's why it was
My old magazine.
That is why it had such a packed house. We didn't realize that that's really
That's
why
what
it was
everybody
got a lot
wanted
of
to know.
ratings, yeah.
I had to answer his question.
Right.
And second question, Newsweek magazine, another old stomping ground of yours. This show travels the globe. How are you going to deal with that? I said, actually, ABC gave me in my contract the right to take the baby everywhere with me. I don't think ABC had any idea that it would have such a ripple effect through corporate America, but it did.
That was a pioneer. Like you were the first.
that was a huge barrier, and that was the story. I mean, we realized within 10 minutes that the breaking news that day was that this major media empire had let a woman bring a baby to work with her. And before the press conference was over, my PR guy who had admonished me, I see him come in the door of the studio, and he's got Jamie in his arms. He comes right down the center aisle, past all the reporters, and puts the baby in my arms, and that was the picture.
The money shot.
That was the money shot on every newspaper and magazine.
But you're right, Joan, when you say you really want a lot of young people to read this, because based on that story and where we are today and how many changes have really happened, not just in our world, but in terms of technology and reporting in a short period of time, it is extraordinary when you look at the time frame and how much has really happened.
And the industry has also changed, not just the enormous changes for women, but the industry itself has changed. When I started, we shot everything on film. you'd go back after your story. They'd have to like develop the film. You had time to think about it. And then you went in with an editor and you picked your best parts and you put it together and you went on the air at night. Then we got videotape. And as soon as it all changed to video, now you went out with one guy that had like a light on top and it was huge for the station. It was economically just amazing. But, you'd be at a story and they'd say, okay, lay down, write your voice track in the car, lay it down, and we'll send a messenger to get it. And then shortly after that, we got our first satellite truck. And I went out on the first satellite truck in New York at WABC. And we went out to Long Island. I remember they pulled over the side of the road. The guys were getting the dish up on the top of the truck.
Exactly.
And I'm still in the van. And I put my earpiece in and I hear the director back in the studio in New York. And he's like, Joan, do you hear me? I said, yeah, I hear you. Okay, we're coming to you in 45 seconds. It's like, what?
Yeah.
I had not gotten out of the van. I had not shot any tape. I had not talked to anyone.
It's live, yeah.
And I said, all right, my industry just forever changed in this instant.
I mean, when did CNN start?
So then
that's when
after
it changed,
that, that
right?
was the next big
24-hour
change.
cycle.
Yeah, but
So that was the next big change. I remember after the show one day, Charlie said, let's go into the control room and watch this press conference at 10 o'clock that Ted Turner's doing. And he's like, I'm going to do 24-hour news channel. And we're like, how are they going to fill 24 hours? And does anybody have an appetite for that? We couldn't even imagine that within 10 years there would be shopping channels 24 hours and entertainment channels and the proliferation of channels. And then the next big thing that really changed the entire industry was Fox.
Yeah.
And an unapologetically politically biased news station. Mm-hmm. And that, even though you didn't have another equal, other side of it pop up, it seeps in because your CNNs, your MS Nows, they all feel compelled to show and talk about an opposing view. So I think if you asked any of them, are you politically biased on the other side? They would say, no, we are showing both sides. I really think they truly want to be that, and that is probably, their goal. But they end up sometimes being the opposite because they're trying to even things out. But then the internet came along.
Right.
And what happened then with the internet, and that probably changed everything more than any of the other changes that I've just outlined, because that then gave the everyday Joe the ability to
have a viral thing.
Have a viral, and then the algorithms of the internet started putting people into their own little
communities,
their own little boxes.
Yeah.
And that has just changed everything, because now instead of people turning on the news at night to find out just what happened today, now they go into and the younger generation is getting it on their phone.
No question. And YouTube, I mean, everything's completely changed.
So they're not really seeing just a general newscast.
Right.
They're watching.
They don't want to see it either.
They're watching.
They're not interested.
And they're
also
hearing whatever that algorithm wants them to hear.
Right.
So and you know what? You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
No.
That's exactly right.
You can't do it.
Right.
But I have to tell you, I hear day in and day out on my social media, if I post anything about GMA or about Charlie, or, I'll get, 800 people immediately saying, oh, we really yearn for the day when you guys were on air and you just told us what the news was. 1997, the news had taken over our show because we had always been part of the entertainment division. And it's hard for a new division, even though they got us all together, and Bob Iger, head of the network, said, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We're not changing anything. And Charlie leaned over and said, so who's going to go first, you or me? Because they are going to want to put their own thumbprint on this thing.
Yeah.
First thing to go is our set, all the browns and golds and the home, the set that looked like a home, and that made it a blue and silver and gray news set with a big world. And then our family members left, and they just had reporters. I mean, they took away really the essence of that.
They took the soul away.
The soul away from it. And then they took me away. Now, they signed a new 3-year contract with me, and I didn't really want to to be very honest, to sign it. I mean, after 20 years of waking up that early, I was burned out.
You were ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was so ready to
Yeah.
leave. And I said, can't you put me like on 2020 or something else? And they're like, this is like one of our, it's their most money-making news part of the whole day. That is their big moneymaker, that morning news division.
And then you led into like Kathy and Regis. Is that? The
Yeah,
one that
we
came
well
right
we
after?
led into then programming that was not network
Oh, I
programming.
see.
It's
Yeah.
syndicated programming. So those shows like with Kathy and Regis back then, that's a syndicated program.
Okay.
And the day parts are all broken up as to whether local gets it or whether network gets it. But back then they kind of talked me into signing that contract. And I was reluctant, but fine. Like, how do you walk away from a job like that?
Right.
And they signed this huge deal for 3 years. And 3 months later, they took me off the show.
And
Oh
why
my
was
gosh,
that?
Shocking.
Because there was a vice president who had not really come from our side of TV. He had come from the numbers side, the number,
Right.
the ratings numbers side, where they 18 to 49 and all,
The bottom line side.
Yeah.
the bottom line side. And he was completely convinced that the 18 to 49 still wanted younger people. And so they replaced me with a 30-year-old lookalike, really, like almost a lookalike. And 6 months later, they took Charlie off and replaced him. Now, can anybody remember the two people that replaced us?
No.
It's funny because
Exactly.
people will still come up to me sometime when they see you. It's like, oh my God, and they'll say, oh, I love you in the morning. Like, okay, I haven't been on in the morning for 25
20
years,
years
but,
ago.
but it's just their mind connects
Yeah,
you.
exactly.
With
You
that
had
show.
opportunities to then do so many more exciting things, and you
Yeah.
reinvented yourself. You had that great show where you were a showgirl, and you took on so many
well,
roles.
that's my favorite, maybe my favorite show of all time, Behind Closed Doors. In that contract that they signed with me, they couldn't pay me equal to the co-host at the time because it was in his contract, David Hartman.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, he had come from Hollywood. He'd been a big star. I don't know if you remember Lucas Tanner,
Yes.
Bold Ones.
Yeah.
And so nobody else could be called co-host, and nobody else could make, they couldn't be equal. They couldn't start the show or finish the show. And I took that job because that was, really a good job, even with those restrictions. So, but now at that point, I'd been on the show for 10 years, and I said, all right, let's figure out how to, bring me up here. And I said, why don't you just give me some specials, and then you can pay me for the specials, and that way I can make what he's making, but you aren't in conflict.
In breach of the contract.
In breach of the
yes.
contract. So they gave me, and they said, yeah, but we got so many other women doing sit-down celebrity interviews. There's Barbara Walters, and there's Oprah, and there's Connie Chung, and Diane Sawyer. I said, I don't want to do that. I want to take people behind the closed doors of exciting, challenging careers like flying an F-18 and landing on an aircraft carrier,
Right.
or jumping with the Golden Knights, or jumping with the 101st Airborne. So I got them to say yes to it. And they said, yeah, but they're not going to let you do those things unless you go through some pretty extensive training. I said, yes, and we're going to shoot all of that. And that's what's going to be so
good.
amazing. So I did something really unusual with this book. It's the first time anyone's done it. I have QR codes.
I love that.
That's great.
All throughout the book. So when I tell you about the whole story about being at 75,000 feet in a U-2 spy plane and having a crisis on board, thinking our landing gear wouldn't go down, after you read the story, then you can hover your phone over it. Or if you're watching on your phone, you can just click it, and it will open up to the actual story.
That's so smart.
Wow,
the
that's
video.
Really
so
so
cool.
smart. Why hasn't anybody done that before? That's so smart.
I don't know, but
That's
I
really
just
smart.
figured as I was picking out the pictures for the book, I thought, God, there's so much great video. I'd love to share it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Smart.
I get to show people my career and my life as opposed to just writing about it.
Right.
I'm sure there'll be many more like other
That are going to
books.
follow
Absolutely.
suit.
Yeah.
Because it's so smart.
I love breaking barriers.
Can I just shift back for a quick second, because I think a lot of people that are watching and listening will want to know this. You've had the opportunity to interview, everybody that anybody could think of. So it might be hard to whittle it down to like a favorite. I'm sure people have asked you this before, but somebody who was a favorite, and there's a really great story.
If you want to know who was the most fun to interview, it was
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Robin Williams.
I mean, you never knew how to prepare for a Robin Williams interview.
We miss him.
Because, oh my God, he was so talented and he was just so out there. And no matter, you could study for the interview, but once it started, you never knew the next minute he might be over like doing your hair.
It's like a Jim Carrey thing. Like, you
Oh
just
my
don't know what's
God,
going
he
on.
would just go on this stream of consciousness and he was so much fun.
And that was at the height of his Mork and Mindy sitcom,
Oh, it was
or was
after
that
that.
afterwards? Okay.
No. Like I can remember the last few times I interviewed him. I was interviewing him once for that Awakenings.
Oh yeah,
remember
the
that?
movie, of course.
Which is one of his more serious movies. But he was getting ready to shoot Hook. So like he went off on this whole tangent.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they're going to have me in leotards. It's going to be like Hook and with Jello pudding. Like he goes off on this whole thing. And we were supposed to be talking about Awakenings.
Right.
But I mean, you just never knew where he was going to go. And if you had him on together with Billy Crystal, he could go real blue, real fast, which is somewhat problematic when people have kids in the morning that,
Sure.
you know,
Right.
watching. And,
Right,
I mean, there were
exactly.
people we never interviewed live. We would never interview Joan Rivers live.
Oh,
I mean, there
another
were,
one that we
Exactly.
missed.
You
I
know,
mean,
there
there
was-
were just some people that you always did.
Had a
and-
delay. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, you always interviewed them after the show. You did a post tape after the show.
And any politicians or, I'm sorry, Karen, any
I
politicians
covered 5 presidents.
and which one really stands out for
I
you?
mean, I got to
Sure, all of them,
know President Ford quite well, and I got to know George Bush Sr. very, very well. I became very close friends with Barbara, and I got to know Bill and Hillary. They live right by me they live in Chappaqua, and I'm in Greenwich. And I've been on many daises with both of them for different things. I've I introduced him at many events that I've hosted and he's been at. So I got, invited to the White House. But I started going to the White House when I was covering Ronald Reagan, and get to go to state dinners. And, I tell the story in the book about how I was at a dinner and I was seated. They seat you.
Yeah.
Of course.
And you don't sit next to who you came with. And I really disliked my husband at the time, so I was very happy that I didn't have to sit by him. And I was in between Nancy Reagan and Ralph Lauren. And like
Those are good partners.
They get into this crosstalk about the fact that she has breast cancer and the fact that he was dealing with cancer,
Brain cancer.
which was not
Public.
made public. And I was kind of surprised, like, I'm a
Hello.
journalist sitting in the middle of you. But that was back at a time when
You respected.
You
the-
respected
the
yeah,
law.
like if you were an
privacy.
invited guest to a dinner at the
Right.
White House,
Right.
You didn't leak that.
you would not go back and divulge what you heard there. I don't know if the same thing would happen today.
I don't think so.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I don't think so. It's so interesting how, I mean, just the access that it
Yeah.
provided for you,
It's-
and
Yeah.
But you have an excellent reputation.
You
and
do.
I think that
Yeah.
I always say to the younger people, like, really all you have is your reputation.
It really
because
is.
You can have great school, SAT score. It doesn't matter. Like, once you get out of the first job, it's your reputation.
It's
and
really
yours
true.
is very good.
So I remember being at the White House. We were at actually the last party for George Bush Sr. He had just lost the election. And I took my mom with me. I took her with me a bunch of times, and she just loved it. And so we're standing with Barbara and George, and their Air Force band is playing the last song. And Barbara leans over and says, when this ends, like, there's an elevator right behind us. George's going to take your mom by the arm, and we'll go upstairs. I don't think your mom's ever seen the private quarters. Now, truth be told, I'd never been up there at that point.
Wow.
I was like, okay. Music ends. George takes my mom. I mean, her buttons must be popping at this point. Whoa! And we get in the elevator, we go upstairs, we sit down, and George looks at my mom and says, your daughter, she asks me tough questions, but that's okay. That's her job. She's supposed to do that. But she's always been wonderful to my Babs.
That's
And
great.
anyone
that's so
who is
sweet.
wonderful to my Babs is first rate in my book. And so,
And you spent time in Maine in the summer, so do
Oh,
you
yeah,
see
and
them?
they were in
do you see
Kennebunkport.
Because you're not too far from Kennebunkport,
not
right?
too far, and they have a wonderful place there. But my funniest story about presidents is President Ford, because I had gotten to know him very well. And when I started doing Behind Closed Doors, I wanted to get into the Betty Ford Center and do a Behind Closed Doors of Betty Ford, and no journalist had ever been allowed in. So when my producers reached out, they came back and said, President Ford has told his wife that you should be allowed in, that at some point somebody needs to, and that you are a respected journalist and that you will treat it fairly. But she insists that you come and spend 4 days as a patient before you are allowed to bring your cameras in. So that was quite an experience. But the funny story, years later, my husband, then I had been remarried, my husband gets on a plane in Los Angeles, and he's in first class, and the Secret Service come on and say, President Ford is coming on, would you mind moving back a seat so that we can put Secret Service next to him? And my husband says, of course. He moves, and as they're coming on, he says, President Ford, President Ford says to him, thank you for moving back. And he says, well, my wife talks about you all the time. She thinks you're terrific. Who's your wife? Joan Lunden. Oh my gosh, and so they get into this talk. So now they all sit down, and Jeff picks up his cell phone and calls me and says, you're never going to believe what just happened. At which point, President Ford turns around and says, are you talking to Joan? Let me say hi.
Oh, that's sweet.
I'm in Greenwich in this little store called Threads and Treads, which carries athletic goods and bathing suits.
Right.
I am in a little tiny, and they are tiny little dressing rooms in that store, trying on bathing suits, and I am naked. I have taken my clothes off. I am ready to put a bathing suit on. My phone rings, and it's Jeff. That's okay, except now I'm talking to President Ford, and I am naked.
In your birthday suit.
And I just felt so vulnerable, and but
I bet.
he doesn't know that, but I know that.
Exactly. If you had been Neiman Marcus, you might have felt differently, but Threads and Treads, we know what that is. So
it's got this tiny, and already there are little tiny places where you try on have saloon doors, which is weird. Like you don't want to try on a bathing suit behind a saloon door that opens like that to the President of the United States.
Oh my gosh, that is too funny.
And I want to tell this story someday, so I put it in the book.
Great.
And then when my editor who was reading it said, I don't know if you should really tell that story. I mean, is it disrespectful? And I said, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
He's not the one that was naked. It was you.
Yeah. These are real life moments people want to know about.
Yeah.
Well, there's so much in here, and writing a book it's a journey.
Oh boy,
And you've
it's
written
really a
many.
journey.
Yeah, this is my 11th.
Why did you decide to write an 11th book?
Most of the books have been about different chapters of my life. You know, when I lost a lot of weight, when going through health, having twins, I went from healthy living to healthy cooking to growing up healthy. I wrote a book about change when I left GMA, about cancer, had I known, when I went through cancer journey. As I'm aging, I wrote a book about women and aging. That was the last one. But this is about my entire life. This is my legacy. And I don't know if I could have written it, at least not in the way it is now, until this point in my life. Because, as I was leaving GMA, and you're leaving such a big job, and some snotty little guy reporter said, oh, gee, how are you ever going to top this, London? And it's like such a negative, nasty question, but appropriate. And it always kind of was in the back of my head. And I think I lived with that for the next 25 years. But at this point in my life, I can look at everything I've done in the last 25 years, all of my by the way, I've done 10 other shows since then, but none of them were on the network early in the morning. I actually did one on CBS Network called Wickedly Perfect, looking for the next Martha Stewart. But at this point, I can say, well, look at the advocacy work I've done in breast cancer and women's health and aging, testifying before the House Ways and Means Committee to expand the Family and Medical Leave Act to include, and testifying before the FDA to get mandatory mammogram reporting. I thought, and this is the doctor's daughter who always thought I'd be a doctor and then worked in a hospital right before college and found out that it's probably not going to happen. This was my chance to kind of pick up that torch from my dad and carry it and really kind of carry on his legacy and have a chance to make my mark in the world. So I only think at this point, when you can look at the total arc of your life, that this 25 years was maybe just as important as that 25 years that was so big and so public.
There's a lot that happens over our lifespan.
Yeah.
There really is. No, it's a fantastic read, and we suggest it for everybody. And tell us your schedule as to where everybody can catch up with you along the way while you work.
Palm Beach Historical
I'm
Society.
at the Palm Beach Historical Society tonight, which is going to be a really wonderful event. Tomorrow, Palm Beach Illustrated is coming to my house to do a photo shoot. I've already done the interview, so that's going to be a September issue, I think. And then I'm on all over the U.S. on tour for the next 2 months. And then I'm back down here in the fall, October, November, December. We have many, many more Palm Beach, Boca, Boynton Beach, Miami kind of book events.
Wow. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming
Thank
on.
you. It's been so much fun to talk to you and just to really, stop for a minute and think about how things have changed so
Yeah.
much for women and for journalists.
Yeah.
And just the world has changed so much from when you began and I began and then you hopped in and you were along the way too. And just it's really something to think about.
And another mother of 2 sets of twins. I'm
Yes,
making
yes,
all
exactly.
my children. This is required reading in the Barefoot household.
Thanks for coming in, Joan.
Thank you so much.
It's really been an honor. Really,
It's
thank
been
you.
fun.
Don't forget to follow us on @GoodDayPB and to watch our show on Apple TV, Spotify, or YouTube.
Perfectly Palm Beach Candles and Diffusers, the official scent of Good Day Palm Beach, can be found at Hive, Lily Pulitzer, and many more local stores. Also online at perfectlypb.com. The perfect Palm Beach gift. Privet Palm Beach Presents is a production of Privet Studios and is available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify platforms. You could reach out to us on Instagram at Privet Palm Beach and at theprivet.com. Thanks to the Privet Studios team, including Summers Laffey, Will Cannon, our friends at Mass Inbound, and music by Kevin MacLeod.